Well, now to another bizarre failure of leadership from the Albanese government when it comes to Australia's Jewish community. The Assistant Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Julian Hills, who once accused Israel of being hell-bent on formalising a policy of apartheid and called for Australia to fast-track formal recognition of a Palestinian state, has been appointed as a middleman to liaise with leaders of Victoria's Adass synagogue, which was burnt to the ground in a terror attack last month. Now, look, can someone please explain how this guy, who clearly does not have Israel's best interests at heart, has been appointed as some sort of quasi-liaison between Jewish synagogue leaders and Anthony Albanese? It just seems as though it's a shocking tin-ear appointment. Joining me now is Executive Council of Australian Jewry co-CEO Alex Ryvchin. Alex, really nice to speak with you as always. Thank you for joining me. Look, it's fair to say we've come to expect nothing less from Labor when it comes to these matters, but I want to ask you, what do you think of Julian Hills' appointment in this role?
Well, Danica, I think it's entirely consistent with the government's approach and mindset ever since October 7. They very clearly see no connection between demonising Israel, using offensive and abusive language towards its people, treating the state as a pariah, denying entry visas to its ex-politicians, failing to rule out arresting its prime minister if he were to come to our country, all of these measures, and soaring domestic anti-Semitism. They view the two as being distinct and having no connection with each other. But in reality, when the government takes an increasingly hostile and adversarial role in the relationship with Israel, treats it more like a rogue dictatorship rather than a historic ally and democratic state, it signals to wider society that those who support Israel in Australia, which is principally the Australian Jewish community, are fair game. So I'm sure that Julian Hill was as appalled as we all were by the Adass firebombing terror attack. I've no doubt about that. I'm sure he'll try to do his best with the task that he's been given, but I wish he would also take the time to reflect on some of his own rhetoric and how that has contributed to the febrile environment in our country in which a synagogue can burn.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, as I said, it's just such a bizarre appointment, but we don't expect anything less at this point. And just on this terror attack, I've got to ask you, it's been 4 weeks since that attack on the synagogue. No arrests have been made as of yet. How confident are you that everything is being done to find those involved?
I have absolute confidence in law enforcement and security agencies in this country. I have absolutely no doubt that they want to bring these perpetrators to justice. This was a deplorable attack, not merely on the Jewish community and the Adass community, but on religious freedom and freedoms of all kind in this country. And we need to determine who did this, why, what their motivations were, what ideology, if any, they're linked to, and if there's an ongoing threat to communal assets and the community at large in this country. So I'm sure the authorities are doing everything they can, but with these sorts of attacks, you know, when you talk about arson attacks, a lot of the physical evidence is destroyed. It's difficult to determine who was involved. They were clearly conscious of the security cameras that were around the facility. They were covered up by all accounts. But I'm sure the authorities will do whatever they can to bring these people to justice because the community and wider society demands answers. They want to see justice as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. We all do, for sure. Now, a new report by Israel's Ministry of Health has detailed the abuse of hostages held by Hamas inside Gaza. This includes sexual violence against children, torture and starvation, amongst many things. Alex, the details really do make for a harrowing read, and it puts into perspective because, you know, Western countries, they're seeking to really punish Israel for defending itself against these monsters. Israel has the right to save its captive citizens. Hamas must surrender and release the hostages.
Absolutely. And like you said, it makes for harrowing reading. It confirms everything that we dreaded and feared was transpiring and knew was transpiring, but this provides that further evidence of those horrors, of what these people are going through. And it really is an indictment of world governments, of the international system, of human rights organizations that have entirely abandoned these people. And not only abandoned them, but actually, as you say, have turned on Israel, have completely forgotten why Israel is at war, why the destruction of Hamas is such a moral imperative of our time. And when you have so-called human rights organizations like UNICEF and Save the Children supposedly concerned with the plight of children around the world, and you have the Bibas kids 9 months old and 4 years old still held captive there in hell, and nothing is being done for them. When you have groups like Amnesty International, which were founded to fight for the liberation of those held wrongly in custody, and all they do is wage campaigns against Israel, accusing them of everything under the sun, this is an indictment of the morality of those organizations. And long after this war ends and the hostages, God willing, are free, those organizations will stand damned for what they've done. And I hope the public long remembers their moral corruption and decay that led to these sorts of decisions.
Absolutely, and also the Western nations who have failed to support Israel in its time of need while it's trying to defend itself from such monsters, and I'm sure Israel won't forget that either. One more topic, Alex. The latest ceasefire negotiations have reached a deadlock. How confident are you that things might actually change when Donald Trump gets in? He has already said that all hell will break loose unless Hamas releases the hostages. Is that what Israel is waiting on now, the Donald Trump inauguration, to see what might happen?
Well, Israel won't be waiting on anything because it knows the situation in which its citizens are being held. And from the beginning, through diplomatic means and military means and intelligence, it has tried to do whatever it can to bring those people home and liberate them, because Hamas certainly won't, and the international community won't. But I'm wary of who we're dealing with here. Hamas is not a rational actor. This is an evil organization for which human life and human dignity is a punchline. And all the way through this, they've tried not only to terrorize the Israeli people through the ultra-violence of October 7, but through psychological warfare. And I fear that every time they talk about being close to a ceasefire, it is a ploy to elevate hope in Israel and therefore lead to greater pressure on the Israeli government, lead to unrest and street protests to paralyze the state. This is what Hamas is planning for. This is what they're trying to execute. They know they can't defeat Israel militarily, but they're trying to break the society apart. And inevitably, when these talks fail, because Hamas wants them to fail, they have no interest in ending this war, the Israeli people will look to their own government for answers. But I hope people realize that when you're dealing with Hamas, the only language they understand is force. And this is not a rational actor that seeks peace. They seek destruction and death and annihilation at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Alex, fingers crossed for a better 2025 to bring the hostages home. That's all I think we all really want to see. Alex Ryvchin, always great to speak with you. Thank you for your time on the show this evening. Appreciate it.